What's going on, everybody? My name is Gus and welcome back to the VR Vault. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the deep sea underwater survival horror experience called Narcosis from Honor Code Studios. This game hopes to give players an idea of what it's like to be trapped 600,000 miles under the sea, or however deep the sea is. I don't know how deep shit is, but it hopes to give you a horror experience with some heart-wrenching story involved, and I'm here to tell you if it works or not. So let's just get this out of the way right now, just to get everyone's expectations on the same level. Narcosis is barely a game. I wouldn't call it a game because the gameplay mechanics that it has are very, very basic, and it doesn't really do much other than have you walking around from point to point, solving a couple of puzzles here and there, and just experiencing the stories. It's more akin to walking simulators like Firewatch or Dear Esther. I know they said that was definitely an influence in their development, and it definitely shows. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. So it says it's a survival horror experience, right? But this game really isn't that scary. I don't know if it's just me because I'm used to playing a lot of virtual reality games and I'm not really fazed by them, especially after I played Outlast, good lord. But it wasn't that scary to me. And besides a couple of jump scares here and there, the enemies kind of weren't really scary, and just the presence of being underwater didn't have that big of an effect on me. Which is weird because honestly, games like Subnautica were terrifying. And I think that I can pinpoint the reason that it's not scary is due to the fact that you're walking around rather than swimming. And the fact that you're walking around really just makes it feel like you're not underwater at all. And the fact that you have this helmet on and you're breathing heavily because of your oxygen tanks really doesn't do enough to make you feel like you're deep underwater. So without the horror aspect, you might be thinking, all right, well, it's not very scary, but at least are there some gameplay elements that will keep me going? And are there some interesting mechanics that will let me traverse through the world in an interesting way? And once again, I have to say, not really. The three main gameplay mechanics that you are able to use in this game are your jet boosters, which I use mostly just to get through the game a little bit quicker. You have a knife, which is used with the X button, which is used to fend off enemies. And then you have your flares, which I think, again, the overabundance of which kind of detract from the horror experience as well. There was not a time that I ever ran out of flares. You're able to carry 10, and as abundant as the oxygen is, there are also flares generally to resupply, so you're really never in any dark situation if you don't want to be. Side note, the flares kind of worked really weird in virtual reality. For some reason, the trajectory is like angled way to the left. So whenever you throw a flare, you have to like turn your head and like then you'll throw it forward, which is really, really strange. I'm not sure why that works like that, but that's just something that you have to, I don't know, get used to when you're playing, which is kind of takes you out of the experience a little bit. Unfortunately, these gameplay mechanics really aren't enough to carry the game, and without the horror aspect and without fun gameplay, you're really just relying on a great story to make this game worthwhile. And we kind of already established this game as a walking simulator, so is it a good one? I guess that's really the question. And again, unfortunately, I have to say, it's not really that interesting. The first hour of this game was kind of a slog, and seeing as this is only a 2-hour experience, that's half the game that you're really just kind of giving bits and pieces of the story. There's a pretty intense sequence at the very beginning, but after that, it's a very long stretch of not much going on and just these weird dialogue tidbits that don't mean much. Like, I'll play an example right now, but you'll hear that it's kind of just nonsense. It doesn't really make much sense, and it doesn't advance the story along.
Even though I had to, those first few steps weren't easy. I've seen death before, but not like this. Up here, the impact's usually more abstract. This is intimate. It's like when you pass an accident on the freeway. All the possibilities run wild. But then a song you like comes on, or your exit's coming up, and you've moved on.
Now, it definitely picks up towards the end. The last hour is definitely more enjoyable than the first hour, but again, you have to slog through an hour's worth of relatively boring gameplay without too many exciting moments to be had throughout that first portion. And to be honest, I really wanted to give this game a full chance. I know there was a surprise or two waiting for me, so I really thought I would give it a fair go and play through the whole thing. And I'm glad I did, but again, you will have to slog through a relatively large portion of the game with not much going on. Which is unfortunate because I think the story is dragged down by the boring gameplay mechanics. If I had just been able to advance through it a little bit quicker, I might have been able to gain some traction with the story and feel invested in the characters that I was playing with and finding along my way. But this game's like caught in the middle, right? It's like it could have committed to being a horror game and a really, really scary one, but it just didn't. And I think it did that because it wanted to tell people a story, so it didn't want to scare off people who were interested in checking out the twist ending or whatever. They didn't really commit to being a game either. They kind of just threw in some mechanics because walking around isn't as exciting as boosting around, and I guess there's some combat, but it really doesn't have much of a challenge. The survival aspects of it is just going from oxygen tank to oxygen tank, and not one time that I was really worried about my oxygen levels. There's pretty abundant supplies of them lying around in the wreckage, so you're really not struggling against the clock at any time in this game. Again, to me, it just feels disjointed. It feels like the developers didn't really know what they wanted from their game, so they kind of just threw a couple of mechanics and a couple of things together that they thought would mix well or what people would want in a game, rather than sticking with their gut and saying, we're making a story experience or we're making a horror game. And it kind of just floats in this limbo, and unfortunately, it doesn't work. On the plus side, this game is absolutely gorgeous, and this small indie team, the fact that they could produce such a great looking product is honestly very surprising, and the graphical fidelity at some points in this game are easily on par with AAA studios, so I really congratulate them for that. Unfortunately, the rest of the experience just falls short, and I don't think it's worth your while to pick this up just to see the visuals, but again, it is very impressive that an indie studio can produce these kind of things. So Narcosis fails to deliver in pretty much every aspect, and unfortunately, I think at the $20 price tag, unless you're an absolute huge fan of walking simulators and are really interested in allowing yourself to get immersed in the story and go find all the collectibles and read all the pages of text on each of the characters that you come across, this game might be for you. But if you're looking for some really, really intense horror or really interesting gameplay mechanics, you're really not going to find it in Narcosis. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click this button right here to subscribe to the VR Vault for more reviews, first looks, and previews of different virtual reality games. If you aren't sold yet, click one of these buttons right here, and you'll be taken to one of my other videos, and maybe you'll subscribe then. But anyways, guys, take it easy. I'll see you next time.